Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our morning Srimad Bhagavatam class at the Bhakti Center. Ghanashyam Prabhu is speaking live from Florida. Ghanashyam Prabhu, thank you so much for blessing us with your association. We have Andrea co-hosting this class. Andrea, thank you very much for your steadiness. Hare Krishna. Angel is here.
Ghanashyam
Good
Prabhu,
morning.
we can't hear you. Are you unmuted?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm unmuted.
Okay. Adipusha Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Thank you for the bhajans. For those of you who are new, we are doing these bhajans every day at 6:45. Join on Zoom for bhajans, guitar bhajans, transcendental Bob Dylan, Adipusha Prabhu. Isabel, Spirit Soul, Hare Krishna. Good morning, Pat. Radhika is here. Good morning, Radhika. Susan, good morning. Suzanne, good morning. All right. I think we can start. Ghanashyam Prabhu, the floor is yours. Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 2, which is entitled Prayers by the Demigods, Text 42. Shri Shuka Uvacha Ityabashtuya Purusham Yadrupam Anidam Yata Rameshano Purodaya Deva Pratyayordivam. Translation. After thus offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the Transcendence, all the demigods, with Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva before them, return to their homes in the heavenly planets. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is said, Atyapiha Chaitanya Isabalila Kare Yandre Bhage Take Se Dekaye Nirantare. This is from Chaitanya Bhagavat, Madhya 23, 513. The incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead appear continuously, like the waves of a river or an ocean. There is no limit to the Lord's incarnations, but they can be perceived only by devotees who are fortunate. The Devatas, the demigods, fortunately understood the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus they offered their prayers. Then Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma led the demigods in returning to their homes. The word Kuchik Gata, meaning within the womb of Devaki, has been discussed by Sri Jiva Goswami in his Krama Sandarbha commentary. Since it was said at first that Krishna was present within the heart of Vasudeva and was transferred to the heart of Devaki, Sri Jiva Goswami writes, how is it that Krishna was now in the womb? He replies that there is no contradiction. From the heart, the Lord can go to the womb, or from the womb, he can go to the heart. Indeed, he can go or stay anywhere. As confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Adantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. The Lord can stay wherever he likes. Devaki, therefore, in accordance with the desire of her former life, now had the opportunity to seek the benediction of having the Supreme Personality of Godhead as her son, Devaki Nandana. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 10th canto, 2nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Prayers by the Demigods for Lord Krishna in the Womb. Omikyantimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Yadha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinobandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I beg for the blessings of the assembled devotees. Adi Purush Prabhu asks for your blessings. May our words be aligned with Guru Parampara. May they bring pleasure. Shishi Radha Mulidhar. May all the devotees be benefited by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam together. Nice to be with all of you this morning. Again, we're reading Canto 10, Chapter 2, entitled Prayers by the Demigods, Text 42. After thus offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the Transcendence, all the demigods, with Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva before them, return to their homes in the heavenly planets. So this is the conclusion of the prayers offered by the demigods to Krishna while he's in the womb of his mother, Devaki. It's described that first Krishna was in the heart of Vasudeva. He came into the heart of Vasudeva, and therefore Vasudeva became brilliant like the sun. The sun is so powerful. It lights everything up, but if you look into the sun, you can go blind. So it's said that Vasudeva also, when Krishna was in his heart, he was unapproachable. Vasudeva was unapproachable, just like the sun. And then from the heart of Vasudeva, he transferred into the heart, into the mind of Devaki. And then from Devaki's mind, he entered the womb of Devaki. And she became so beautiful. When Krishna was in her womb, she just became also very radiant. There's a nice verse there that described she was so beautiful, but because she was in the house of Kamsa, her beauty was suppressed. It was, covered. And there's a nice principle there. If we have anything auspicious, beauty, love, knowledge, goodness, then it has to be distributed. Even if we're just feeling a little happy in life, that things are going well for us, or there's some happiness, we should immediately think, now how to give this out, how to now distribute. We have to think about how to do that. But that principle is that if you just keep it, whenever anything is auspicious for you, and you keep it to yourself, then it begins to spoil, or it begins to fade from your own consciousness. But if you have that mentality that anything auspicious, if I'm receiving something right now, let me also find some way, in some form, I should also now give it, distribute it. So that's a nice verse. It talks about Devaki. She was like a person who had transcendental knowledge, but unable to distribute. So her beauty, Krishna in her womb, the beauty that was coming up from her, but she was imprisoned in the home of Kamsa, so it could not be let go of. It could not be sent outward. So when Kamsa saw that his sister was so beautiful in this way, he could understand that Krishna is within her womb. And he knew that Krishna was planning to kill him. So Kamsa became obsessed. It's described that whether he was sitting on his throne or going about his daily activities, he couldn't get Krishna out of his mind. Out of fear, he knew this child will kill me. And he thought maybe he considered killing his own sister again. But then he thought to himself, ultimately, this is the Supreme Lord. Even if I kill her, he can still find some way to survive and manifest. So better just not follow through with that plan. So he just let it be, and he was terrified. There's a verse in the 11th canto that talks about 3 emotions that are so powerful, so consuming. Snehat, Dveshat, Bhayat. These 3 emotions, so strong: love, hate, and fear. Love, hate, and fear. And this is not speaking of pure love. It's from the material perspective, this thing we call love. We can become very attached. All 3 of these are attachments, right? If you love somebody, if you're very attached to them, right? If you hate someone, you're also attached to them, right? You see, when you hate, it's in your mind. It's like an obsession. I hate this person. There's an attachment, therefore, to that person. And when you fear someone, you're also attached. Again, look at Kamsa here in this section. His mind is attached to Krishna out of fear. And it's interesting, that verse describes in the 11th canto that those 3 emotions, because you're attached, you're associating with hate, with fear, with love. And it begins to form you. It's like cultivating something within your heart, right? You're hating somebody. It's the cultivation of hate within yourself, and it starts to form you. Svarupatam, it says. So those emotions are so strong, and they begin to form within us when we meditate, when we could become attached in that way. So Kamsa was so fearful, he was so anxious, always thinking of Krishna, but not favorably. In Krishna consciousness, we want to also always think of Krishna, but with affection, with love, with a service attitude. This is favorable. So Kamsa was also always thinking of Krishna, but not in a favorable spirit. So then at that time, when Kamsa was so anxious in this way, the Lord is in the womb of Devaki. Then Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and many other demigods and great sages, they invisibly came before Devaki to offer prayers. They could understand, they could detect that the Lord was there. And they came to offer beautiful prayers to the Lord while he's in the womb of his mother, Devaki. And so that's this chapter. And they told in their prayers, Krishna, you're not being born like an ordinary person. Yet you decide to appear in a very similar way, right? Krishna's pastimes, this is called Naralila, his human-like pastimes. They're human-like. He decides to appear in a very similar way. He's in the womb and then he'll manifest, right? But it is very different. And it says in the 39th verse of this chapter, Karanam Vina. There's no material cause that he's, in the womb now, just like we are forced to be in the womb. We are forced to be in the womb by the laws of nature. Now, why does Krishna enter the womb? What's the cause? Vinodam. The cause is simply his pleasure. His pleasure. That's what moves Krishna in all circumstances. So he decides to appear in a similar way like we do. But it is under very different circumstances. It is his lila, it is his play, it is his pleasure. And for us, we're forced by the material energy. There's a description of the child in the womb in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sometimes we have a very romantic idea of the child in the womb is so comfortable and safe with his or her mother, just very protected and safe and very warm. But the Bhagavatam paints a very different picture. It's a traumatic experience. When they want to punish someone, a criminal, they put somebody in jail. They're confined. And if they misbehave, even in jail, then what do they do as a punishment? They keep making their space smaller and smaller in a small cell. And then even there, if one continues to misbehave, solitary confinement, they keep confining. And then there's a type of punishment, there's a type of torture really, where the space is so small that you can't even stretch your limbs. This is like a form of torture for a person. You restrict more and more. So you can imagine a child in the womb is in that condition, so restricted. It's very traumatic, actually. It erases previous memory. We know that every living being is carrying so many experiences, so many samskars, so many impressions and memories from previous situations and lives. And that is sort of erased from the trauma while we're in the womb and we take birth. And we become forgetful. I want to read that verse from the 3rd canto, because the child in the womb prays to the Lord in that condition. When we're actually really aware of suffering, then spontaneously, naturally, prayer comes from the heart. And so I wanted to read 2 verses from the child in the womb. This is the 3rd canto, 31st chapter, text 12 and 13. So it says, the human soul says, this is the child in the womb with a prayer, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only, because he can give me relief from all fear. And from him I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. So I've received this condition of life. I'm here in the womb, but it's just befitting my own impious activities. So this person, this child in the womb is taking ownership, responsibility, that yes, I'm in this condition. Everything happens by God ultimately, but also understanding that I've caused this. I'm not blaming, but I take responsibility. And then this next verse, 13. I, the pure soul, appearing now bound by my activities, am lying in the womb of my mother by the arrangement of Maya. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him who is also here with me, but who is unaffected and changeless. He is unlimited, but he is perceived in the repentant heart. To him I offer my respectful obeisances. So the child recognizes the Lord is also here with me in the womb. He's everywhere, but he can only be perceived by one who has this repentant heart and who has this prayerful mood. You know, we take birth and then we come out into this world. And then we soon think, okay, now I'm free. I'm no longer confined. But we're still within the womb. Even when we come out, we're still within the womb of Prakriti, of the material nature. It's the same idea, but on a larger scale now. You know, you're very confined in the mother's womb, and we take birth. And then there's a kind of illusion, Maya, that now I'm free. Now I can do anything I want. You know, now I can move and live and expand. But we're still within the grip of the material nature. We're still within the womb of Mother Nature. And it may seem we can do so many things and we're so free to move. But we see that actually, however much we go around and do things and try to enjoy ourselves, what happens? Then comes the time of death, and then back into a mother's womb, and then back again. We're born back into this womb of material nature, and this happens again and again and again. We're trapped in this, just like the baby in the womb, in this material creation, until finally we get some insight that this is what's happening. And we long to come out and to return to the Supreme Lord, just like this child in the womb is praying, offering these beautiful prayers to the Lord. We have to come to that point in life where we've had enough of trying to enjoy so many things in so many ways. You know, like someone in their teens and 20s gets very excited that they can do so much and explore so much. That's natural, of course. Go so many places, do so many things. But they're meant to get to the realization later in life that even though I was running here and there, there's actually nothing. There's nothing that's truly satisfied me. After all that, I'm left empty-handed. Now what do I do? So when this realization comes into a person, then they become very sincere and serious in turning to the Lord and seeking the ultimate solution for that deep longing in the heart to reconnect to ourselves, to God, to others. That's the deepest urge within the living being. And we misplace it and go after so many other things, and we get fooled and tricked again and again. And finally the realization comes. I need to come in contact with someone who actually knows the ultimate solution. You come across someone who truly knows, the Guru, and we take shelter. And we begin this process of bhakti. So we're in the womb still, the womb of Prakriti, the womb of the material energy. So just like that child in the womb, those prayers from the third canto, we have to pray to the Lord with a repentant heart. And we pray the supreme prayer, which is the Maha Mantra. It's been made so simple. And we chant with this repentant heart, offering our obeisances to the Lord. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gives us nice guidelines for the chanting of the holy name. in his Shikshastakam prayers. It gives the perfect mood. You know, the demigods here are offering beautiful prayers. They're concluding their prayers to the Lord. So what is the supreme prayer? The supreme prayer is really just a calling out to the Lord, just calling his name. You know, it's interesting. It's the, prayer, we think of so many words, you're saying so many things. But this Hare Krishna, the Maha Mantra, is just like a calling out from the soul with affection, with a repentant heart, calling out for the Lord's shelter, and also the desire, how can I serve you? That's also contained within the spirit of the chanting. How can I serve you? I've tried serving myself for so long, and I realize it doesn't work. So now I'm turning to you. I want to serve you. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the last chapter, he reveals the Shikshastakam prayers. He's in Gambhira. Gambhira means, this is like seemed to be a part of the home of Kashi Mishra, his dear devotee. Gambhira means grave or deep. So he's in this place, the Gambhira, and he is speaking to Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Rai. And every evening, he's chanting various verses, getting absorbed in hearing and chanting and tasting the reality of those verses. And one evening, he begins to recite his own verses, Shikshastakam, 8 verses. And it's explained that he's taught those verses before, but now he is personally just, relishing them himself. And he speaks, Cheto Darpanam Arjanam Bhavamaha Devagni Nirvapanam. First of all, he glorifies the chanting of the holy name. In that first verse, there are 7 glories of the name. There are 7 effects from chanting. It cleanses the consciousness, the chitta, Cheto Darpana. The chitta, the consciousness, is like a mirror. It can reflect, the mirror can reflect what's above or what's below. But because there's dust on this mirror, it's very dirty. It's not reflecting what's above anymore. It's not reflecting. The Supreme Lord's reflection is supposed to be in that mirror, actually. It enters in to the consciousness, but because it's covered by dust, it requires to be cleansed. This is what the chanting of the holy name does. It cleanses the consciousness. And what else? There are 7 effects. Then it also extinguishes the fire of material life, the forest fire of material existence. So in that way, the first verse gives all these different symptoms and glories, virtues of the chanting. And then the second verse of Shikshastakam. This really is like the mood to chant with. Second and third verses. How do we chant? What should be the understanding? What should be the mood? So, Nam Namakadi Bahuda. There are different teachings in each of these verses. And this second verse has 4 teachings. And it's very similar to these prayers we were reading from the child in the womb because of the repentant heart that comes out in this verse. This is how we should chant. Nam Namakadi Bahuda. First of all, the first teaching is that you have countless names. You have countless holy names. This is your mercy. Just like this chapter ends in the last word of the purport to this chapter. Prabhupada just says, Devaki Nandana. This is the one name of the Lord. It's in relationship with his devotee. He has primary names and secondary names. The primary names are his Leela in relationship with his dearmost devotees. That's a primary name, like Devaki Nandana, Madan Mohan. So many names Krishna has, Govinda, and it's in connection with his pastimes, with his relationships, with very intimate devotees. And then he has secondary names, which are names that are, these are really like his functions in connection with the material nature. You know, when we say God, Ishvara, he's the controller. That's his relationship to the material energy in a sense. Or even just the name God, God the controller, the supreme. These are his secondary names. So that's the first understanding, that he has so many names. This is his great mercy. Nija Sarva Shakti Statarpita. And in each of these names, he invests his full energies. All of his energies are invested in the name. This is another teaching in this verse. Abhinabhuti. Abhinabhuti means this strong conviction that the name and God himself are one. All his energies are there. He's actually there in the name. Completely. This is very interesting. When we're in a pure state of consciousness and we're completely surrendered to the Lord, when we hear words in that pure state of consciousness, the word, the meaning, and the substance, the vastu of that word are all revealed in the word itself. You know, like on a very high spiritual level. Now we're in this material world and everything has become separated from everything else. But if we could suddenly imagine being on the spiritual platform, there's a way in which everything unites and becomes one, right? Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. That everything on the spiritual level is one and different. But focusing for a moment on the oneness of everything, what that means is that even the word of a particular object is one with that object. So when you're hearing particular words, personalities, they have names. So the name and the substance and the meaning are all there in the name. And so that means if you say Krishna, you completely get the substance of Krishna. You get Krishna himself completely, and he's everything. So that's why it is the supreme, word to utter, to speak, because everything is contained in it. So in that pure state of consciousness, sound is non-dual. It's not separated from the actual, what the sound represents. For us, it represents something else. Like in material consciousness, you hear a word, and it's very different from the thing. It's become separated because of our fallen condition. Because as we fall from that spiritual platform, then everything breaks up and becomes separated from everything else. That's why so many people are seeking, unity between people but this can only be realized on the spiritual platform. It is a natural symptom of the spiritual platform for things to be one, still a difference, still some variety, but there's a oneness in which everything is connected. So when somebody hears, just like you hear some from the words of a pure devotee, when you hear the words, if we're also in a pure state and we're hearing from a pure devotee, then the words that they speak are revealing the actual thing. It's also an experience of the thing that's being spoken. So when a pure devotee is speaking about Krishna, a pure devotee who's listening is seeing Krishna, is actually experiencing Krishna in the words. Whereas for us, there's this term, Paraschinna Gyan, Paraschinna Gyan. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains this, that when an ordinary, a soul who's not surrendered to the Lord, they may be hearing pure words, pure vibration. But this Paraschinna means that it's fragmented, it's broken up. The word is broken away from what it actually is. And so we just try to, we write it down. We take little scraps of information. Oh, this person said this, and we write down our notes, and we try to remember it. We try to recall it because it's become broken up. So this is a kind of knowledge, but from the material consciousness, the material platform, it gets fragmented and broken, and then we just collect bits of information, like data. You hear a class, and it's just kind of information. We try to remember it, maybe we forget it, maybe we remember it. But when we're in a pure state of consciousness, when you hear, you actually experience what you're hearing. The words contain the reality, which is normally behind the words for us, but they're one. They're not behind the words on the spiritual platform. The word is the thing. Anyway, this is called, in the second verse, this teaching of this firm conviction, abhinna buddhi, that the sound of Krishna's name is Krishna, and we should chant with that understanding. So those are two teachings from the second verse of Shikshastakam. And then Lord Chaitanya, he becomes overwhelmed because of these glories. He mentions 7 glories in the first verse, and now 2 more. No, 3 more, I'm sorry. And the other one, Niyamata Smarane Nakala. Then also it's such a glory, the ease in which a person can chant. That is also glorious. Niyamata, there are no hard and fast rules, Prabhupada says. There's a simplicity, right? You're just walking down the street. You can say Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It doesn't take much at all. It doesn't require any. You can do it anytime, anywhere. That's also a glory of the holy name because it's so powerful. It's invested with all the Shakti of the Lord. It is the Lord. And yet, I can just speak it and be connected. So, Niyamata Smarane Nakala. Another glory. And then with all these glories, Lord Chaitanya becomes overwhelmed. Etardishi tava kripa Bhagavan mamapi. My dear Bhagavan, your mercy is so great. Your mercy is so great. And then the last line of this second verse, Shikshastakam, Durdaivam idisham ihajani nanurag. Durdaiva means, but I am so unfortunate. But I am so unfortunate, even though all these glories are there in the name. Because I'm so unfortunate, the attraction is not being born in my heart, the attraction to the name. So this is his lamentation. Before he recited that verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says that Lord Chaitanya suddenly became overwhelmed with humility and lamentation. And then this verse, Nam Nam Akadi Bahuda, the second verse flowed from his heart. And he spoke this verse. So he was in a deep state of humility and lamentation, and then he spoke this verse. And the last thing I want to say about this second verse, Shikshastakam, is that what is that misfortune? I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for the name. What is that misfortune? That's also described. It is the offensive heart. It is the offenses. We know there are 10 offenses. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives us an insight about the 10 offenses. He simplifies it in a sense. At first, the 10 offenses, if we look through them, it seems like a random collection of just, different ideas. But he says, actually, the 10 offenses are 10 manifestations, psychological manifestations of envy towards the Lord. That's the essence of if you can condense all the 10 offenses, or you can find one word to describe what's in all of them, it is this envy in the heart towards the Lord. And so what's the cure for that? The cure is just what we're describing, that you just chant, and with this understanding of the second verse, that Krishna and his name are one, and you just place your attention on the sound of the vibration. That's all. Somebody sent a letter to Prabhupada and they asked, Prabhupada, when I chant, my mind is so distracted. Isn't that everyone's question? What do I do? My mind is so distracted when I chant. And Prabhupada gave an amazing response, which is very much worth meditating on. He said, what is the question of mind? All you need is a tongue and an ear to chant. You just chant and you hear. Now, this is actually overcoming envy. How is that? If you just chant and keep putting your attention on the sound of the name, you're actually proving to Krishna, you're overcoming envy, because it's putting Krishna first. You see, like when we're lost in our minds when we're chanting, it's like a self-worship. My mind, my thoughts, my feelings, my desires, my plans, my goals, my concerns, my suffering. We're lost in that mind. In this way, we're staying in the center by inattentive chanting. We stay centered in our minds. This is called in the Bhagavatam Manodharma, the religion of the mind. And what's the worship that takes place in that religion of the mind? The worship is that I just stay centered in it. I'm constantly just absorbed in my own mind. I'm lost in my mind. It's like a kind of self-worship. But that sincere effort, okay, forget that for a moment. Just hear the name of Krishna. Oh, I'm distracted. Okay, hear the name of Krishna and put him back in the center. Put him first again. That's how we show our love. This is overcoming envy. We're only going to overcome envy by Krishna's grace, by Krishna's mercy. But that just sincere attempt to hear the sound vibration is the way we can actually overcome envy. It's that simple. But it's not simple. We know it's not simple because of the distracted mind, the inattentive mind. But realizing that inattentive chanting is envy towards the Lord. Because I stay absorbed in my own world, which means my own mind. I stay first. I got to work all this stuff out first in my mind. I got so many concerns. I have so many things to do, and also I have plans for my life, and I have desires that are coming up, and I have thoughts. I just look back and think about things in my life. You see, inattentive chanting, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur says is the root of all the other offenses. So the inattention is a symptom of envy, which is offense. But that simple dedication to just, no, that's what I'm doing when I'm inattentive. And the deepest level Inattentive chanting is deliberate because it keeps me in the center. On the deepest level, it's habitual at this point to stay lost in our minds. It's habitual. But on the deepest level, there is a desire to stay there in my own mind because of envy towards the Lord, not wanting to put the Lord in the center. So I sit down and I chant and I realize this. And there's a kind of lamentation, Durdaivam. Lord Chaitanya says, there's a lamentation that I've turned away. I am lost in this. I do have envy. But that's just my condition now. So what do I do about it? I don't get too devastated by that either. I just see that this is the reality. So this is what I do about it. I just hear the sound vibration. Hare Krishna. Don't let your mind get involved in that. It's just your tongue and your ear. It's showing respect to keep the mind out of it. It's showing the desire to love Krishna, to put him first again. We have to put Krishna first because he is first. He is the source of everything. Everything emanates from him. He is the first principle. And when we put him first, when we chant by attention, by the attention on the sound, attentively hearing the sound Krishna, we're putting him first. We're putting him back in the center. We're overcoming envy. And when he's pleased with that effort, then he reveals himself in the name. So I mention all of this here in context to this verse and chapter because these are the demigods. They're praying to the Lord. They offer beautiful prayers. This is the conclusion of their prayers. And in the next chapter, we have the actual birth of Krishna, the appearance of Krishna. And just as a reminder, we hear it so much, the glories of the holy name, it becomes mechanical. Yes, I know. Sometimes we become disconnected. So trying to give just another perspective or just re-emphasize what I've heard from the acharyas about the glories of the holy name. They're so glorious, they're unlimited, they just keep going on, but yet I can't taste it. So bring that lamentation into your chanting. And just all that's meant to be done is to hear the sound. And by just hearing the sound, we are overcoming the offenses. And the essence of the offenses is envy. Putting Krishna back in the center, putting Krishna first again by hearing his name, putting our attention on his name. So this is an amazing section coming up. We're going right into the next chapter. This was the last verse of this chapter. The next chapter is the birth of Lord Krishna. Very exciting and auspicious to discuss this together. So we'll stop here. Are there any thoughts, comments, questions? Hare Krishna.
Hi. I was just wondering. One second, just. All right. You were mentioning envy. I mean, it's human. I call human nature for people to put themselves first. Your problems are the biggest thing in the world. But when you say envy, I don't think most people actually say, I am jealous of God. I don't think God is perfect. I think it's just automatic that most people just put themselves first, and you just have to work on trying to, fight that. So the comment, I don't see, because envy to me is when you sit down, you actually think, I want to be this, I want to be like this person, I want to be like God, I want to be that. So if you could just comment on that.
Yeah, that's a nice question. And it has become our nature. This is our fallen nature, of course, to have this envy. So it's natural while we're in this fallen conditioned state, but it's not actually natural for the soul. But the whole idea is we're forgetting the link to God. That so like you said, we're putting ourselves first. but God is first. We forget that that is an expression of envy because God is the supreme. He's the first. We are the servants. But we've taken the role of being the masters by, again, my own self-absorption, by just focusing on myself. So hidden within that tendency is envy towards God. So maybe we're not so conscious of it now. It's kind of vague. Like you said, we just, well, I'm just living my life, putting myself first. That's kind of natural. But it's actually the position of God. He's the first. And we've turned away from that. And it's been so long that we forget that this is actually has a connection to God. Like you said, usually when you envy a person, you know, you're thinking about that person and you start to get like upset. But what's in that? That I want to be that person. I want to be that person. Right? I wish I had what that person had. So we have all of that within us that's actually directed to the Lord. But we're forgetting it's directed to the Lord. It just kind of manifests in our life as a kind of, I'm first. I'm in the center. I got to take care of myself. I got to protect myself. I got to, you know, all of that. So in a deeper, I think it's revealed with time to us that it does have a relationship with my envy to the Lord. Maybe we're not completely aware of it at this moment, but we're dealing with a symptom here. And as we start to get more insight, we realize, oh, this is actually my turning. This is all happening because of a turning away from God, because I want to play God. Right? God has a certain inherent position, and I'm the servant of God on a spiritual level. But I want to try playing like God. And therefore, he creates this whole material world where we can act like gods, and we get lost in it. Until we realize what we're doing and how it is envy towards the Lord. Now I want to return them. Now I want to serve the Lord. And we learn along the way through this process that it does have a relationship to the enviousness I have towards God. But in the state we're in now, maybe we've forgotten that, and we're just fighting with the symptoms. And also that fighting that you mentioned, you cannot overcome it. You cannot fight it on your own with your own methods. So like, you know, we think we can suppress the envy. Like if you have envy in your heart and you think I got to work on that, you can't. You can try your best to not express it. You can get distracted with other things. You could do something else for a little while in your life. You could try to forget about the enviousness that's there, but that deep envy that's there, it can only be uprooted by God's mercy. And God's mercy is in his name. So it's the chanting that actually overcomes the envy ultimately. Just some thoughts on your question, but thank you. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Ghanashyam. So
Krishna
much
Gal?
else. So much else. But let me start with I don't know, maybe this process of how Krishna appeared first in Vasudev's mind, right? And then his
Yes.
heart.
Vasudev's mind and heart are kind of one here. So sometimes mind is said and sometimes heart is said. So first he enters the mind or heart of Vasudev, and then he enters the mind or heart of Devaki, and then he enters her womb.
Okay, well, that answered that question.
Yeah.
And then another question I had was, you know, when we envy somebody, right, we tend to diminish that person out of that envy, you know, like we don't want to acknowledge that the person is as great as they are, you know, sometimes it's like that anyway. And so I think we said that Kamsa knew that Krishna was within Devaki's womb because he recognized how beautiful she was, right?
Yeah, she was radiant and beautiful. He could understand now the time has come that, you know, Krishna's appearing.
So I just found it a little interesting that, you know, he fears Krishna, and usually you hate people that you fear. You're envious of people that you fear. and people that you feel that way towards, you wouldn't connect them with radiance and beauty, you know? So I'm a little surprised that he would make that connection, you know, of Krishna with Devaki's beauty.
Yeah, well, he doesn't lose his, discrimination of what is actually, he's very intelligent, Kamsa. So he's also very much connected to the Vedas, the Vedic knowledge. He has deep understanding of things. So it's not that he loses all his understanding just because he hates Krishna and has fear of Krishna. So when he sees something, he knows, right? The son of Devaki is going to be the Supreme Lord coming to kill me. So he knows all that. So when he sees his sister display this he still knows what auspiciousness is. He sees radiance, he sees beauty. He knows that now the time has come. So yeah, he's still able to understand, these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder if it's too much to identify the other 5 effects that are mentioned in the first verse of the Shikshastakam.
Yeah, that may be for another time. It takes some description.
Okay.
But if you look at it's kind of like if you look at the verse and the word for word, you'll catch the different sections. There are 7 effects of the chanting. So in the first verse, I think I just mentioned.
Yeah, you mentioned
2.
First 2. Yeah.
And then if you look at the next one, yeah.
Yeah, I can, but I prefer to hear it from you.
Yeah.
But anyway, just so last thing, I just want to say, love, hate, fear, those are the biggest, the strongest emotions. And because they're the strongest emotions, can you just connect that again to the sense of attachment?
Yeah. So, when you really hate someone, they're on your mind, right? So you become attached to that person.
So attachment meaning what you're focused on, right?
Yeah.
What your mind is absorbed in.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, when you're attached, you connect, you're fused, you're linked because of that, because your mind just can't let it go. Like it's described Kamsa, he's sitting on a throne, he's walking, he's talking, but he can't get Krishna out of his mind. He's attached to Krishna, but it's out of fear. So, yeah, that's.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Just a couple minutes left.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hari Purush.
Kashvani.
Bhima Prabhu. Jai.
Echoing. Wonderful class, Prabhu. We like the way you unpack the effects of chanting and the Shikshastra compare is really cool. I never heard it exactly like that before. And this verse is about the demigods gathering together to welcome Krishna and his appearance, just like when Prabhupada comes to the airport, then everybody's there and they're chanting and they're glorifying him, and they're have so much love and respect that there's a tumultuous Radha Swami. He shows up at the airport and there's 2,000 people ready to welcome him, right? It's like a really interesting, because it's not this that we don't just not appreciate him and then get rid of envy, but it's replaced by this amazing glorification. When the first time Radha Swami ever came in this building, they let me wash his feet. It was so sweet. He was sitting on the second floor, and that was the temple room there. And it's very interesting, to take off his socks and put the water there. And, and there were actually some devotees here that were not very thrilled to see him here. And it was kind of interesting because they felt they took on the not just lack of respect, but repulsion that they had for Maharaj toward myself, So when we glorify Krishna, or we glorify the pure devotee, we stepped into that connection And the people that respond to Krishna in a certain way will respond to us the same way. It's very powerful, experiential. Anyway, thank you for the class. Very nice. All glories to Prabhupada.
All glories to Prabhupada.
And
Bhima Prabhu, did you have anything you'd like to
when
share?
he first came in this building, I washed his feet also. But he would only let me wash one foot. He said, "You're my god brother. I can't let you wash. I'll give you one foot." Hilarious.
Thank you, Prabhu.
I love these welcoming things. And one time in Columbus, Kulaji, who was the GBC there, the devotees were having this big kirtan to welcome him. And it was kind of funny. There were a lot of outrageous devotees there at that time. So they brought out a big bowl to wash his feet. And he went running back to the car. And they came after him, picked him up in the air. And then he wrapped his feet up inside his dhoti. He didn't want them to wash his feet. So they were dunking him in the water like a dhoti. They're dunking him in his feet in the water like a donut. Washing his feet through the dhoti while the kirtan was going. Anyway, a lot of pastimes like that of welcoming devotees and demigods are doing it. But why do they hide? You said they're invisible.
Yeah, that's how it's described. I'm not sure. I think
he can't hear. What did you say?
Bhima Prabhu, please.
I don't want to interrupt.
I think you're good to go.
Okay. Prabhu, what a wonderful class.
We can't hear
timely.
You. Why do the demigods invisible? We're not worthy to see them, or they? What do you think?
Didn't Prabhupada say that the reason why the demigods don't come here, even to go to the bathroom, they don't come to Earth? We're not worth seeing anymore. Yes, yes. Anyways, wonderful class. Very timely.
We can't hear.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Prabhu, but Adi Prush Prabhu just seems not to be able to hear the rest of us, I think.
That's because he's an old man who's completely unable to handle the new technology. Somebody young help that old man out.
Somebody help Adi Prush Prabhu.
That Friar Tuck, that Robin Hood. Band of merry men. Feeding the poor, robbing the rich. Very quickly, because I think we're running out of time here. Wonderful class. I think this is very, very important. Probably the most important point, especially in this day and age when everything is going so fast. We cannot do the rituals, so-called rituals that are necessary in the past ages, and we also can't even hold the thought from, at least I can't, from 1 hour to the next. The concentration, the meditation, but we can call out the holy name, and Krishna puts us in situations of desperation, of material desperation, so that we learn to call out his name and understand that he's right there, as you mentioned in the beginning of the class, in the womb, side by side with us, that even in our adult age, especially when we're heading back into the womb, so to speak, that he is there, and we have to be desperate. We have to desperately call out the holy name. We have to pay attention. If we are comfortable, if we find ourselves in a comfortable situation with our service or our material life, our complacency, Christ said, you're either hot for me or you're cold for me, but if you're lukewarm, that means complacent or comfortable, I'll spit you out. So we have to always understand that we are brought challenges and hurdles and reversals of situations so that we might more sincerely call upon Krishna to help us, and then become more intimately aware of Krishna's presence in our life. So thank you very much for reminding us that by quoting the Shikshastaka Prabhu. Wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Ghanashyam Prabhu. Beautiful. Wonderful unpacking of Shikshastaka prayers. Like Adi Prabhu said, I never heard like that before. Beautiful. And I called Bhima Prabhu yesterday to come to he's my 12-step sponsor, and I called him yesterday, and I was telling him how I'm doing this and that and the other, and then this thing happened, but I'm so wonderful and so great that I'm still holding strong, holding the fort, but I need some encouragement. And he went straight to the point. He said, how is your chanting, Prabhu? How is your chanting? Chanting is real. So, and you gave wonderful class about chanting today. So thank you very much, Ghanashyam Prabhu and Bhima Prabhu. Your God brothers, Radhanath Maharaj is empowering you. Thank you very much for being in my life. Particularly, I'm really grateful, bowing down to you both. Thank you very much. I'm going to chant with burning tears after this class. Bhima Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Ghanashyam Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Akiko-chan, Hare Krishna, you're beautiful for Krishna. Who else? Suzanne, Angel, Angelica, Isabel, Henry Prabhu, Arjuna Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Arjuna Prabhu. Kartik is here, Yogeshwari, Gail, always intelligent questions. Derek Hansen, beautiful smile, beautiful beard. Wonderful seeing everybody. Have a beautiful day. I'm talking too much. Haribol.
Haribol.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ghanashyam Prabhu ki jai. Thank you.